The sound of splintering wood echoed through the valley as Keira Madsen's axe bit into another log, her muscles burning from hours of work that should have been done by hired hands she could no longer afford. The ranch her father had built from nothing in the hills outside Spokane, Washington, was crumbling around her, and at 24 years old, she had no idea how to stop it from slipping through her fingers like water through a sieve. It was the spring of 1882, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the property that had once employed 15 men, but now sat eerily quiet, except for the rhythmic thud of her axe and the occasional lowing of the handful of cattle that remained. She wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, leaving a smudge of dirt across her forehead. Her dark hair, once carefully pinned each morning, now hung in a messy braid down her back, and her hands were calloused and rough. 3 months had passed since her father had died from pneumonia, leaving her alone with debts she had not known existed and vultures circling in the form of neighboring ranchers who made increasingly bold offers to buy her land for a fraction of its worth. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her tense, her hand instinctively moving to the rifle she kept propped against the woodpile. Strangers rarely brought good news these days. She straightened as a lone rider crested the hill, silhouetted against the fading light. Even from a distance, she could tell he sat his horse with the easy confidence of a man who had spent more time in the saddle than on solid ground. The rider approached slowly, one hand visible and raised in a gesture of peace. As he drew closer, Keira could make out more details. He was lean and weathered, probably in his late 20s, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days of stubble shadowing his jaw. His clothes were dusty from travel, his hat pulled low, but there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested he was nobody's fool. "Evening, madam," he called out when he was close enough to speak without shouting. His voice was deep and measured, with a slight drawl that marked him as someone from farther south. "I am looking for work. Heard in town there might be a ranch out here that could use an extra hand." Keira's laugh was bitter. "You heard wrong. I cannot afford to pay anybody." The man dismounted with fluid grace, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. Up close, she could see his eyes were a striking shade of blue-gray like storm clouds over the mountains. "I do not need much. Room in the barn, 3 meals a day, and whatever you can spare when you can spare it." "Why would you work for almost nothing?" Keira's grip on the rifle tightened. "What are you running from?" "Nothing but my own restlessness, I suppose." He glanced around the property, and she saw him taking in the sagging fence posts, the overgrown pastures, the barn door hanging crooked on its hinges. "Looks like you have got more work here than 10 men could handle. I am offering to be one of those 10. I told you I cannot pay you. And I told you I am not asking for pay right now." He met her eyes steadily. "My name is Quinn Tanner. I have worked ranches from Texas to Montana. I know cattle, horses, and just about everything else that needs doing on a spread like this. Let me help you for a few weeks, and if you decide I am worth keeping, we can talk about wages when your situation improves." Keira wanted to refuse. Pride warred with practicality in her chest, and she hated how desperate she had become. But the fence line needed mending before the remaining cattle wandered off. The roof on the barn was leaking in 3 places, and she had not slept more than 4 hours in a night since her father died, because there was always something that needed immediate attention. "Fine," she said finally. "But I am keeping this rifle close, and the first sign of trouble you are gone." "Understood." Quinn's mouth curved into a small smile. "Understood, madam. My name is Keira Madsen. This is the Madsen Ranch, though I suppose it is just my ranch now." The words still felt strange in her mouth, weighted with grief and responsibility she had never wanted. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Madsen." He tipped his hat. "Where do you want me to start?" For the next 2 weeks, Quinn proved himself worth 10 men, just as he had claimed. He rose before dawn and worked until dark, tackling the endless list of repairs and maintenance with quiet efficiency. He fixed the barn door, patched the roof, and rode the fence line, replacing posts and restringing wire. He worked with the cattle, identifying which ones were sick and treating them with a knowledge that spoke of years of experience. He never complained, never asked for anything beyond what she had promised, and kept conversation to a minimum. Keira found herself watching him when she thought he was not looking, trying to figure him out. He was clearly educated, his speech more refined than most ranch hands when he forgot to hide it. His hands were calloused but his nails clean. He read in the evenings by lamplight in the barn, books he produced from his saddlebags that seemed at odds with his dusty appearance. There was a story there, she was certain, but Quinn Tanner kept his secrets close. The weather turned foul on a Tuesday, rain rolling in from the west in great gray sheets that drummed against the roof and turned the yard to mud. Keira had been baking bread when she noticed Quinn had not come in from the far pasture where he had been working on the water pump. She stood at the window, frowning at the downpour, debating whether to worry. An hour later he appeared at the kitchen door, soaked through and muddy to his knees. "The pump is working again," he reported. "Should not give you any more trouble for a while." "You are dripping all over my floor," Keira said, but there was no heat in the words. "There are dry clothes in my father's room upstairs, second door on the left. They should fit you well enough. You can hang your wet things by the fire." Quinn hesitated. "That is not necessary, madam. I can dry out in the barn." "Do not be ridiculous. You will catch pneumonia." The word stuck in her throat, memories of her father's final days flooding back. "Just go change before you freeze to death." When he returned wearing her father's old work shirt and trousers, Keira had hot coffee waiting and a bowl of stew heating on the stove. They sat at the scarred wooden table that had been in her family for 2 generations, and for the first time since Quinn arrived, they had a real conversation. "How long have you been working ranches?" she asked, cradling her coffee cup between her palms. "Since I was 15. That would be about 12 years now." He ate methodically, like a man who had known real hunger and never forgot it. "Where are you from originally?" "Virginia. My family had a plantation before the war, lost everything after." He did not elaborate and she did not push. "And you have just been drifting from place to place ever since?" Quinn set down his spoon, considering the question. "I suppose so. Never found a reason to stay anywhere particular." "That sounds lonely," Keira said softly. "Maybe. But it is also freedom of a sort. No ties, no obligations, no one depending on you." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt something shift in the air between them. "What about you? Have you always been here, born in this house?" "My mother died when I was young, so it was always just me and my father. He taught me everything about running the ranch, but I never thought I would be doing it alone." She stirred her coffee absently. The debts were a surprise. "He had borrowed heavily to expand the herd 3 years ago, then we lost half the cattle to a hard winter. He was trying to rebuild when he got sick. I did not know how bad things were until the bank came calling." "How bad is it?" Keira appreciated that he did not dance around the question. "I have until the end of summer to make a payment of $800 or the bank forecloses. I have been selling off cattle to raise money, but at this rate, I will run out of stock before I reach the amount." Quinn was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "There is a cattle drive forming in Yakima. Big outfit heading to the railhead in Cheyenne. They are always looking for experienced drovers and the pay is good. If you could spare me for a few months, I could sign on and send back my wages." Why would you do that? The question came out more sharply than she intended. You do not owe me anything. Maybe not. But you gave me a chance when you had every reason not to. You fed me, trusted me with your stock, treated me with respect. He shrugged. Besides, it would be a shame to see this place go under when a little help could save it. Keira felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. She had cried herself dry over her father's grave and vowed not to waste any more tears on circumstances she could not change. I do not accept charity. Then do not think of it as charity. Think of it as an investment. I help you save this ranch, and when you are back on your feet, you pay me fair wages for the work I have done. Plus, you will owe me a favor which I might collect someday. What kind of favor? Quinn's eyes held a warmth that made her pulse quicken. I have not decided yet, but I figure a favor from a woman as stubborn and capable as you is worth something. Against her better judgment, Keira found herself smiling. You are either the most generous man I have ever met or the most foolish. Probably some of both. He returned her smile, and for the first time since her father's death, the weight on Keira's chest felt a little lighter. The next morning, Quinn prepared to leave for Yakima. Keira packed supplies for his journey, trying not to think about how empty the ranch would feel with him gone. In just 2 weeks, she had grown accustomed to his quiet presence, the sound of him working, the way he appeared at mealtimes with observations about what needed doing but never made her feel incompetent. I should be back by late summer, he said as he saddled his horse, a sturdy bay gelding he called Ranger. The drive will take most of that time. You should have enough money to make your payment with some left over. Be careful, Keira said, then felt foolish for the maternal tone. I mean, do not do anything reckless. If you get yourself killed, I will still owe the bank. Quinn's laugh was warm and genuine. Yes, madam, I will do my best to stay alive. He swung into the saddle with practiced ease, then looked down at her. You be careful, too. Do not work yourself to death while I am gone. The ranch needs you healthy. I have been taking care of myself for a long time, Quinn Tanner. I know you have, but maybe you do not have to do it all alone anymore. Before she could respond to that, he touched his hat brim and turned Ranger toward the road. Keira watched until he disappeared over the hill, then returned to the endless work of keeping the ranch running. The weeks that followed were the longest of Keira's life. She rose each day to tackle the necessary chores, but the property felt vast and empty without Quinn's presence. She had not realized how much she had come to rely on him, not just for the physical labor but for the companionship. Meals alone at the big table were a special kind of torture, and she found herself talking to the horses and cattle just to hear a voice, even if it was her own. Letters arrived sporadically. Quinn wrote in a neat, educated hand that confirmed her suspicions about his background. He described the cattle drive in vivid detail, the challenge of moving 3,000 head across rivers and through mountain passes, the tension when they encountered a group of rustlers who thought better of attacking such a large, well-armed outfit. He wrote about the land they crossed, the people they met, the cowboys he worked alongside. But mostly, he wrote about coming back. Keira read each letter multiple times, memorizing the words until she could recite them in her sleep. She wrote back, telling him about her progress on the ranch, the small victories and frustrating setbacks. She told him things she had never told anyone, about her fears and dreams, about missing her father, about the crushing loneliness of being the last of her family. Writing to Quinn felt safe somehow, like speaking into the darkness and knowing someone was listening. Summer deepened, the days growing hot and long. Keira managed to sell more cattle to a buyer from Portland, adding to her carefully hoarded savings. She did the math obsessively, counting and recounting the money hidden in her father's old strongbox. With what she had and what Quinn would send, she would just barely make the payment. There was no margin for error, no room for disaster. Disaster came anyway, as it always seemed to. The fire started on an August night when lightning struck the dry grass near the barn. Keira woke to the smell of smoke and the terrified screaming of horses. She ran barefoot into the inferno, throwing open stall doors and driving the panicked animals out into the night. The heat was intense, searing her lungs and singeing her hair. She grabbed buckets, hauling water from the well in a futile attempt to stop the spread, but the barn was old and dry and burned like kindling. By the time the fire burned itself out, the barn was a smoking ruin. 3 horses were dead, trampled in the panic. The tack room with all her saddles and gear was destroyed. Worst of all, the small office where she had kept the strongbox was completely gutted. The metal box itself had survived, but when she pried it open with shaking hands, all that remained of her carefully saved money was a pile of ash. Keira sat in the mud and soot and wept for the first time since her father's funeral. She cried for the horses, for the lost money, for the ranch she was now certain to lose, for Quinn who would return to find all his efforts wasted. She cried until she had no tears left, then dragged herself to the house and collapsed into bed as dawn broke over the ruined property. She woke to the sound of hoofbeats and sat up groggily, her eyes burning and her throat raw from smoke. Through the window, she saw a rider approaching, and her heart leapt before her mind caught up. Quinn was not due back for at least another 2 weeks. But it was Quinn who dismounted in the yard, his face grim as he took in the destruction. Keira stumbled out to meet him, suddenly aware of how she must look, covered in soot and ash, her nightdress torn and filthy. What happened? Quinn demanded, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes scanning her for injury. Lightning strike. Last night. I saved most of the horses, but 3 are dead and the barn is gone and the money, Quinn, all the money burned up. Everything you worked for, everything I saved, it is all gone. The words tumbled out in a rush, and fresh tears tracked through the grime on her face. Quinn pulled her into his arms without hesitation, and Keira sagged against him, too exhausted to maintain her pride. He was solid and real and smelled of trail dust and wood smoke and something uniquely him that she had not realized she had missed so desperately. "It is all right," he murmured into her hair. "We will figure it out. It is going to be all right." "How can you say that? I have lost everything." "The bank will foreclose and you risked your life on that drive for nothing." Quinn pulled back enough to look at her, his hands framing her face with surprising gentleness. "You have not lost everything. You are alive. The house is standing. Most of the stock survived. We can rebuild." "With what money? The payment is due in 3 weeks. With this." He pulled a thick envelope from inside his coat and pressed it into her hands. "My wages from the drive, plus a bonus because we brought the herd in ahead of schedule. It is not quite 800, but it is close. We can sell more cattle to make up the difference." Keira stared at the envelope, afraid to hope. "But this is your money, you earned this. And I am giving it to you, to us, to the ranch." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. "Keira, I did not come back early just because the drive finished ahead of schedule. I came back because I could not stand to be away from you any longer. Every day on that trail, all I could think about was getting back here to you, to this place. I know I said I am a drifter, that I never found a reason to settle down. But that was before." "Before what?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Before I met a woman stubborn enough to work herself to death rather than give up on her father's legacy. Before I found a place that felt like it could be home if I was brave enough to claim it." His thumb traced her cheekbone, and she leaned into the touch helplessly. "I am in love with you, Keira Madsen." I think I have been since the day you stood there with that rifle, fierce and proud and utterly unwilling to surrender. I came back to help save this ranch, but mostly I came back to tell you that I am done drifting. If you will have me, this is where I want to stay." Keira's breath caught in her chest. She had spent so long being strong, being independent, refusing to need anyone because needing people meant you could lose them. But looking into Quinn's storm cloud eyes, she realized that some risks were worth taking. Some people were worth the potential for heartbreak. "I love you too," she said, and the words felt like jumping off a cliff and discovering she could fly. "I did not want to admit it, even to myself, but these months without you were torture. I missed you every single day. I read your letters until they fell apart. I dreamed about you coming home." Quinn kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious that might break. Keira kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He tasted like dust and coffee and promise, and she never wanted to let him go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably do something about the fact that you are standing outside in your nightdress." Keira laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. "Practical as always. One of us has to be. You were about to chop wood in the dark when we met. It was not dark yet, it was dusk. Semantics." He kissed her nose, then stepped back with obvious reluctance. "Go get cleaned up and changed. I will start assessing the damage and figuring out what we need to do first." "We?" Keira asked, warmth blooming in her chest. "We," Quinn confirmed. "You are stuck with me now, remember? I claim this as my home, and I do not intend to go anywhere." Over the next 3 weeks, they worked like people possessed. Quinn proved to be a brilliant organizer, prioritizing tasks and making every effort count. They built a temporary shelter for the horses and salvaged what they could from the burned barn. They sold cattle to 3 different buyers, negotiating prices with a skill that surprised Keira, until she remembered Quinn had mentioned his family owned a plantation before the war. He knew business and numbers as well as he knew cattle and horses. The day before the bank payment was due, they counted their money one final time. $812, hard-earned through sweat and sacrifice and sheer stubborn determination. Keira stared at the stack of bills and coins spread across the kitchen table and felt tears well up again, but this time they were tears of relief. "We did it," she whispered. Quinn squeezed her hand. "You did it. You refused to give up even when everything looked hopeless. I just helped." "You did more than help. You saved me, Quinn. You saved this ranch and you saved me." She turned to look at him, this man who had ridden into her life when she needed him most and somehow become essential. "I do not know how to thank you. Marry me." Keira blinked, certain she had misheard. "What?" Quinn shifted to face her fully, still holding her hand. "Marry me, Keira. I know we have only known each other a few months, and I know I do not have much to offer beyond a willingness to work hard and a heart that belongs completely to you. But I love you, and I want to build a life here with you. Make this ranch into something your father would be proud of. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to watch your hair turn gray and your hands grow more calloused, and know that we survived everything life threw at us together." He took a shaky breath. "So yes, I am asking you to marry me if you will have a former drifter who finally found his true home." Keira launched herself at him, knocking her chair backward in her haste. "Yes," she said against his mouth, kissing him between words. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." Quinn caught her, laughing as he spun her around the kitchen. When he set her down, both of them were grinning like fools. "I do not have a ring yet," he admitted, "but I will get you one, I promise. I do not need a ring, I just need you." Keira kissed him again, marveling at how quickly her world had transformed from disaster to joy. "When?" When what? When do you want to get married? Quinn considered. As soon as possible. Unless you want a big wedding with all the fuss, I will wait if that is what you want. Keira thought about it for all of 2 seconds. I do not need fuss. I just need you and a preacher and maybe a couple of witnesses. We could go into Spokane tomorrow after we make the bank payment. Perfect. Quinn pulled her close again, and they stood in the middle of the kitchen, holding each other as the afternoon light slanted through the windows and turned everything golden. They made the bank payment the next morning, watching with grim satisfaction as the banker stamped their receipt and grudgingly acknowledged that the Madsen ranch was saved for now. From there, they went directly to the small church on the edge of town where Keira's father was buried. The preacher, Reverend Samuel Morrison, had known Keira since she was a child and agreed immediately to perform the ceremony. They were married in the church garden with Reverend Morrison's wife and the church caretaker as witnesses. Keira wore her mother's wedding dress, which she had kept carefully preserved in a trunk, and Quinn wore his best shirt and trousers, his hair neatly trimmed for the occasion. The ceremony was simple and brief, but when Quinn slipped a plain gold band onto her finger and promised to love and cherish her all the days of his life, Keira felt the last piece of her broken heart slide into place. I now pronounce you man and wife, Reverend Morrison declared with a broad smile. Quinn, you may kiss your bride. Quinn did not need to be told twice. He cupped Keira's face in his hands and kissed her thoroughly, earning an indulgent laugh from Mrs. Morrison. When they broke apart, Keira was blushing and Quinn was grinning. Mrs. Keira Tanner, he said, testing out the name. I like the sound of that. So do I, Keira admitted, lacing her fingers through his. So do I. They spent their wedding night at the small hotel in Spokane, a luxury they could barely afford but indulged in anyway. Quinn carried Keira over the threshold of their room, both of them laughing, and set her down gently beside the bed. The laughter faded as they looked at each other, the weight of what they had just done settling over them. Are you nervous? Quinn asked softly, brushing his knuckles down her cheek. A little, Keira admitted. Are you? Terrified, he confessed, and they both laughed again, the tension breaking. But I love you and I want you and I promise to be gentle. Keira reached up to unpin her hair, letting it fall in dark waves around her shoulders. I love you too, and I trust you, Quinn, completely. What followed was tender and awkward and wonderful all at once. Quinn was patient and careful, guiding Keira through unfamiliar territory with gentle hands and whispered reassurances. When it was over, they lay tangled together in the sheets, both of them flushed and breathing hard. That was, Keira searched for the right word, incredible. Quinn laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest where her head rested. It will get better with practice. Then we should practice often, Keira said, tilting her face up to kiss his jaw. Yes, madam, I am happy to oblige. They returned to the ranch the next day to begin their married life in earnest. The work was still endless, the challenges still daunting, but facing them together made all the difference. Quinn proved to be not just a skilled ranch hand but an equal partner in every sense. He consulted Keira on every decision, valued her opinions, and never treated her as anything less than his full partner in running the ranch. Together, they slowly rebuilt what had been lost. They constructed a new barn, larger and better designed than the old one. They invested in breeding stock, carefully selecting cattle and horses that would improve their herd. They hired 2 ranch hands when they could finally afford it, young men who worked hard and appreciated fair treatment. The ranch began to thrive in ways it never had before, even in Keira's father's prime. As autumn painted the hills in shades of gold and crimson, Keira realized she had not had her monthly courses in some time. She waited another month to be certain before telling Quinn, catching him one evening as he came in from checking the fence line. "I have something to tell you," she said, unable to keep the smile from her face. Quinn looked up from washing his hands, catching her expression. "Good news, I hope." "I am with child. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Quinn just stared at her. Then he let out a whoop of joy that probably scared the horses and swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. "A baby," he said wonderingly, setting her down and placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Keira asked, though his reaction made the answer obvious. Happy does not even begin to cover it. Quinn kissed her softly. "I did not think life could get any better than it already was, but I was wrong." The pregnancy was not easy. Keira suffered from terrible sickness for the first few months, and Quinn hovered anxiously, trying to help while feeling utterly useless. As her belly grew, the work became harder, but Keira stubbornly refused to be treated like an invalid. Quinn finally convinced her to let the ranch hands take over the heavier tasks, but she still insisted on helping where she could. Their son was born on a snowy March evening in 1883, arriving 3 weeks early and making his presence known with lusty cries that echoed through the house. Dr. Harriet Chen from Spokane, one of the few female physicians in the territory, and someone Keira insisted on despite the higher cost, delivered the baby with calm efficiency and pronounced both mother and child healthy. Quinn held his son for the first time with shaking hands and tears streaming down his face. The baby was perfect, with a tuft of dark hair and eyes that would eventually settle into the same blue-gray as his father's. "He is beautiful," Quinn whispered. "He is perfect. You are amazing, Keira." "Thank you." Keira, exhausted but glowing with joy, smiled up at her husband and baby. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at his son, Quinn said, "Thomas, after your father, Thomas James Tanner." Fresh tears spilled down Keira's cheeks. "He would have loved that. He would have loved you." "I wish I could have met him," Quinn said softly, settling carefully on the bed beside Keira with baby Thomas cradled in his arms. "But I promise to honor his memory every day. I will teach our son to be honorable and hardworking and kind, just like his grandfather was." Thomas grew quickly, a happy baby who rarely cried and seemed fascinated by everything around him. Keira marveled at how Quinn took to fatherhood, never complaining about sleepless nights or dirty diapers, always eager to hold and play with his son. She would often find them in the barn, Thomas secured in a sling across Quinn's chest as his father worked, narrating everything he was doing in a gentle voice that made the baby coo and grab at his shirt. The ranch continued to prosper. Word spread about the quality of their stock, and buyers came from as far as California to purchase horses and cattle. Quinn's business acumen proved invaluable, and within 2 years of their marriage, they had not only paid off all the remaining debts but were turning a healthy profit. They hired more hands, expanded the house to add proper bedrooms, and even managed to save a substantial amount for the future. Keira became pregnant again when Thomas was 2 years old. This pregnancy was easier than the first, and she carried the baby with confidence born of experience. Their daughter, Anna Marie, was born in the autumn of 1885, a tiny thing with Keira's dark hair and a temperament that was already showing signs of her mother's stubbornness. "2 perfect children," Quinn said, holding Anna while Thomas toddled around the room babbling excitedly about his new sister. "We are blessed beyond measure." "We are," Keira agreed, watching her family with a contentment she had never imagined possible. "Do you ever miss it?" "The drifting, the freedom to go wherever you wanted." Quinn looked at her in genuine surprise. "Not for a single second. This is my home, Keira. You and Thomas and Anna, this ranch, this life we have built together. This is everything I never knew I was searching for all those years. Cowboys might be drifters by nature, but not when they find their true home. And I found mine with you. Keira crossed the room to lean against her husband, careful not to jostle the baby in his arms. I used to think cowboys were all drifters at heart, she admitted. That they could never settle down, never be content in one place. I was wrong. You were not entirely wrong, Quinn said thoughtfully. A lot of cowboys are drifters, but I think the difference is whether you are running from something or just waiting to find what you are looking for. I was waiting, even if I did not realize it, and then I found you. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch grew steadily, becoming one of the most successful operations in the Spokane area. Thomas grew into a thoughtful, intelligent boy who loved horses and reading in equal measure. Anna proved to be fearless and adventurous, following her father everywhere and demanding to help with even the most challenging tasks. Keira gave birth to 2 more children, another son named Jack, and finally a daughter they named Rose, completing their family. The ranch hands became like extended family, gathering for holiday meals and celebrations. Quinn hired men who needed a chance, just as Keira had once given him a chance, and paid them fairly for honest work. Several of them eventually saved enough to buy their own small spreads nearby, and the Tanners helped them get started, remembering their own struggles. One evening in the summer of 1892, 10 years after Quinn first rode onto the Madsen ranch, Keira and Quinn sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. The ranch spread out before them, prosperous and thriving, everything they had worked so hard to build. "You remember what you said to me the day we met?" Keira asked, leaning her head on Quinn's shoulder. Quinn wrapped his arm around her waist. "I said a lot of things. Which part?" "You said cowboys were drifters who never found a reason to stay anywhere, and I believed you believed that was just the nature of men like you." She tilted her face up to look at him. "But you proved me wrong. You found your reason to stay." "Not just a reason," Quinn corrected gently. "I found my everything. My home, my heart, my purpose. You were right when you said cowboys are drifters, but you were also wrong because we are only drifters until we find what we are truly looking for." He kissed her forehead. "I found my true home with you, Keira. And I would not trade a single day of this life for all the freedom in the world. Not even the hard days, the fires and the debts and the sleepless nights with sick children," Quinn laughed. "Especially not those days. Those are the days that prove what we have is real, that we can weather any storm as long as we weather it together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. Thomas, now 9, was teaching 5-year-old Jack how to throw a rope, while 7-year-old Anna attempted to climb a tree despite her younger sister Rose's worried protests. It was chaos and noise and absolutely perfect. "I love you," Keira said simply. "More than I did the day we married, which I did not think was possible." "I love you too," Quinn replied. "More every day. I will love you until my last breath and probably beyond that." As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Keira reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She thought about her father and how proud he would be of what they had accomplished, of the family they had built, of the legacy they were creating. She thought about the girl she had been, desperately trying to save her father's ranch alone, and how much she had grown. But mostly, she thought about the day a dusty cowboy rode into her life claiming to be just passing through, looking for temporary work. She thought about how she almost sent him away, how close she had come to missing out on everything that mattered most. "What are you thinking about?" Quinn asked, sensing her contemplative mood. "About how lucky I am. About how one decision, one moment of saying yes instead of no, changed everything." She turned to face him fully. "What would have happened if I had refused your help that first day?" Quinn considered the question seriously. "I probably would have ridden on to the next ranch. Kept drifting for who knows how long. Eventually, I might have settled somewhere, but it would not have been home. Not really. Because home is not a place, Keira. It is the people you love and who love you back. It is building something meaningful together. It is knowing you belong somewhere and to someone." "Well, you belong here," Keira said firmly. "With me and our children and this ranch that would not exist without you. It would exist. You would have found a way. You are too stubborn to fail." Keira laughed. "Maybe. But I am glad I did not have to find out. I am glad you rode into my life when you did, exactly when I needed you most." The children eventually tired of playing and came running up to the porch, demanding dinner and attention in equal measure. Keira and Quinn herded them inside, the house filling with noise and laughter as they prepared the evening meal. It was wonderfully ordinary, beautifully mundane, everything Keira had never dared to dream of during those dark days after her father's death. After the children were fed and bathed and tucked into bed, Quinn and Keira returned to the porch. It had become their ritual, these quiet moments at the end of the day when they could simply be together without the demands of ranch work and parenting. "Thomas asked me today if I missed being a cowboy," Quinn said, settling into his favorite chair and pulling Keira onto his lap. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I am still a cowboy. I just happened to be one who found his home." Quinn stroked her hair absently. "He wanted to know if he would have to drift when he grew up or if he could stay here on the ranch." "What did you say?" "I told him the choice would be his to make. That there was no shame in wanting to see the world, but there was also no shame in knowing where you belonged and choosing to stay there." Quinn's arms tightened around her. "I told him that the bravest thing his mother ever did was trust a stranger who showed up claiming he wanted to work for almost nothing." Keira tilted her head back to look at him. "And I told him the bravest thing his father ever did was admit he was tired of running and ready to build a life." They kissed softly, a gesture of affection worn comfortable by years of practice. When they separated, Quinn rested his cheek against Keira's hair and sighed contentedly. "You ever think about those first few months?" Keira asked. "When everything was so uncertain and we barely knew each other?" "All the time. I think about you standing there with that rifle, all defiant pride and barely concealed desperation. I think about how I knew even then that you were someone special, someone worth staying for." Quinn chuckled. "I also think about how terrified I was that you would send me away before I found the courage to tell you how I felt. I almost did, send you away. After the first week, I kept telling myself I should make you leave before I got too dependent on your help." Keira shook her head at her own foolishness. "Thank God I did not listen to my own stubborn pride." "Your stubborn pride is one of the things I love most about you," Quinn teased, "although it has also been the source of some of our biggest arguments." That was true enough. Keira had never been good at admitting when she needed help or when she was wrong, and Quinn had his own streak of stubbornness that occasionally clashed with hers. But they had learned to work through their disagreements, to communicate honestly and forgive quickly. It was not always easy, but it was always worth it. "Remember our first real fight?" Keira asked. Quinn groaned. "You mean when I suggested we hire a foreman and you accused me of trying to take over your ranch?" "In my defense, I was pregnant and hormonal and terrified of losing control of the only thing I had left of my father. And in my defense, I was trying to help and had no idea pregnant women could be so scary when angry." Quinn kissed the top of her head. "We worked it out, though. We always do." "We always will," Keira agreed. "We have been through too much to let anything tear us apart now." The conversation drifted to more practical matters, plans for the upcoming season, discussions about which cattle to sell and which to keep for breeding, ideas for improving their irrigation system. It was the kind of talk that might seem boring to outsiders but was deeply satisfying to them. Two partners working together toward common goals. As the night deepened and the temperature dropped, they finally went inside to their own bed. Quinn pulled Keira close, her back to his front, his hand splayed protectively over her stomach in a gesture that had become habit through 4 pregnancies. They fit together perfectly, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting. "Quinn," Keira whispered into the darkness. Thank you for not giving up on me, on us, on this ranch. There were so many times when it would have been easier to walk away, but you stayed." Quinn's arms tightened around her. "Leaving was never an option, Keira. Not from the moment I realized I loved you. Cowboys might have a reputation for drifting, but when we find our true home, we protect it with everything we have. And you are my home. You always will be." Keira laced her fingers through his, bringing his hand to her lips for a gentle kiss. "And you are mine. My home, my heart, my everything." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them together. The ranch slept around them, the horses quiet in their stalls, the cattle settled in the pastures, the children dreaming peacefully in their beds. It was a kingdom built on love and hard work, sacrifice and trust, and it would endure because they would make it endure. The years continued to pass in the way years do, bringing changes both large and small. Thomas grew into a young man who was the perfect blend of his parents, with Keira's determination and Quinn's steady temperament. He went away to agricultural college in Pullman, determined to learn the latest scientific methods of ranching, and returned with ideas that helped modernize the ranch even further. Anna, true to her adventurous nature, became an accomplished horse trainer. She had Quinn's gift with animals and Keira's fearlessness, a combination that served her well. She eventually married one of the ranch hands, a good man named Samuel Crawford who loved her fierce spirit and never tried to tame it. Jack showed an unexpected talent for business and took over managing the financial side of the ranch, freeing Quinn and Keira to focus on the aspects they enjoyed most. And Rose, their youngest, proved to have a gift for growing things. She established extensive gardens that not only fed the family and ranch hands, but produced surplus vegetables they sold in Spokane. Quinn and Keira watched their children grow and thrive with the deep satisfaction of parents who had done their job well. They had given their children roots and wings, a foundation of love and the freedom to become their own people. It was all any parent could hope for. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the children organized a celebration that brought together friends and neighbors from across the region. The ranch had become something of an institution in Spokane, known for quality stock and fair dealing, for treating employees well and contributing to the community. People came to honor not just the anniversary, but the legacy Quinn and Keira had built together. As Quinn waltzed with Keira under lanterns strung between trees in the front yard, both of them older and grayer but no less in love than they had been as newlyweds, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "You know what the best decision I ever made was?" he asked, guiding her through a turn. Keira smiled up at him. "Asking me to marry you, before that. The best decision I ever made was hearing about a struggling ranch that might need help and choosing to ride out here instead of moving on to the next town." Everything good in my life traces back to that one choice. And my best decision was saying yes when I wanted to say no, Keira replied. Letting you stay when every instinct told me to protect myself by pushing you away. Quinn pulled her closer, not caring that they were in the middle of a crowded party with dozens of eyes watching. I used to think freedom meant having no ties, no obligations, but real freedom is choosing where you belong and who you belong with. Real freedom is building a life that matters with someone you love. When did you get so philosophical? Keira teased, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. When I married a woman who made me want to be worthy of her, Quinn answered simply. The party continued late into the night, filled with music and laughter and joy. Their children danced and played, their grandchildren toddled around underfoot, and friends old and new celebrated not just an anniversary, but a love story that had become legend in the area. The cowboy who stopped drifting and the ranch owner who refused to give up, who saved each other and built an empire together through sheer determination and stubborn love. As the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, Keira and Quinn found themselves once again on their porch, watching the stars wheel overhead. It was the same porch where they had shared their first real conversation, where Quinn had proposed, where they had made countless plans and decisions over the years. It felt fitting to be here now, looking back on a quarter-century of marriage and forward to whatever years remained. "Do you have any regrets?" Keira asked quietly. Quinn thought about it seriously before answering. "Not a single one. My only regret would be if I had ridden past this ranch all those years ago, if I had been too proud or too scared to ask for work. If I had missed out on all of this because I was too stubborn to admit I was tired of being alone. I have regrets," Keira admitted. "I regret all the time I wasted being afraid. I regret not telling you I loved you sooner. I regret every moment I doubted us or doubted myself." "But we got there eventually," Quinn pointed out. "That has to count for something. It counts for everything." Keira leaned into him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "We have had a good life, Quinn Tanner." "We have had a magnificent life," Quinn corrected, "and we are not done yet. We still have years ahead of us, God willing. Years to watch our grandchildren grow, to see what Thomas and Anna and Jack and Rose accomplish, to make new memories together." "Promise me something," Keira said suddenly. "Anything. Promise me that when we are old and gray and can barely walk, you will still dance with me in the kitchen." Quinn laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Keira, love, we are already old and gray. I am 57 years old and you are 51. Our dancing days might be numbered." "Then promise me you will hold me while we watch the sunset. Promise me you will still tell me you love me every day. Promise me you will stay, always stay, until the very end." Quinn's expression sobered, understanding the deeper fear beneath her words. "I promise. I will be here until my last breath, and if there is any way to stay with you beyond that, I will find it. You are my true home, Keira. Nothing will ever change that." They stayed on the porch until the last guest departed and the lanterns burned down to embers. They watched their children clean up the remnants of the party, working together with the easy cooperation that came from being raised in a household where everyone contributed. They saw Rose's husband helping her carry sleeping children to their wagon, Anna and Samuel laughing about something as they stacked chairs, Thomas and Jack discussing plans for expanding the south pasture. "We did good," Quinn said softly. "We did very good," Keira agreed. "Better than I ever imagined possible." As they finally headed inside for the night, Quinn paused in the doorway and looked back at the ranch spread out under the stars. Somewhere out there, a younger version of himself was still drifting, still searching, still lonely even if he did not realize it. That young man had no idea that his entire life was about to change because of a stubborn woman with a rifle and a failing ranch, and enough courage to take a chance on a stranger. But that younger Quinn was not real anymore. The real Quinn, the one who mattered, was the man who had found his purpose and his passion, who had built a legacy not of conquests or adventures but of love and family and honest work. The man who had learned that being rooted was not a trap but a gift, that having people depend on you was not a burden but an honor. "Coming to bed," Keira called from the stairs. Quinn closed the door and followed his wife upstairs, to the bedroom they had shared for 25 years, to the bed where they had made love and made children and made plans for the future. As he settled beside her, pulling her close like he did every night, he sent a silent thank you to whatever force of the universe had guided him to this ranch on that spring evening in 1882. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you too," Keira replied, her voice already soft with approaching sleep. "My cowboy who stopped drifting." "Your cowboy who found his true home," Quinn corrected gently. And as they drifted off to sleep, the ranch quiet around them and their family safe under the same roof, Quinn Tanner knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he belonged. The drifting days were behind him, replaced by something infinitely better. He had found his place in the world, and it was here, with this woman, on this land, surrounded by the life they had built together through love and determination, and an unwavering commitment to each other. The years that followed their anniversary continued in much the same vein, bringing the normal joys and sorrows of life. They lost friends to age and illness, celebrated the births of more grandchildren, and watched the world change around them as the 19th century gave way to the 20th. The ranch evolved with the times, incorporating new technologies and methods while maintaining the core values Quinn and Keira had established. When Quinn turned 65, he finally agreed to step back from the day-to-day management of the ranch, turning over most responsibilities to Thomas while remaining available for advice and guidance. It was harder than he expected, letting go of work that had defined so much of his adult life. But Keira helped him find new purpose in teaching his grandchildren, writing down the history of the ranch, and simply enjoying the life they had built. Keira proved less willing to fully retire, still involving herself in every aspect of the ranch well into her 60s. Quinn teased her about it, but he understood. This land was in her blood, passed down from her father and now being passed to her children and grandchildren. Walking away completely would be like cutting off a part of herself. They were blessed with good health and remained active and engaged well into their 70s. They still took their evening walks around the property, though at a slower pace than in their youth. They still danced in the kitchen when the mood struck, though now it was more swaying together than actual dancing. They still sat on the porch every evening, watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. On a warm summer evening in 1920, 38 years after Quinn first rode onto the Madsen ranch, he and Keira sat in their customary spot on the porch. Quinn was 75 now, his dark hair completely silver, his face deeply lined but still handsome. Keira was 69, her own hair white as snow but her eyes still as sharp and determined as the day they met. "You know what I was thinking about today?" Keira asked, reaching for Quinn's hand. "Tell me." "I was thinking about that conversation we had so long ago, about cowboys being drifters, about what you said, that you were a drifter until you found your true home." She squeezed his fingers gently. "You changed my whole perspective on what home means. I used to think home was just a place, just land and buildings and familiar spaces, but you taught me that home is the people you love and who love you back." Quinn brought her hand to his lips for a kiss. You taught me that too. I spent so many years wandering, thinking I was free, but I was really just lost. I did not find freedom until I found you, until I let myself put down roots and build something lasting. We built something good, did we not? We built something extraordinary, Quinn corrected. 4 children who are good, kind people raising good, kind children of their own. A ranch that employs dozens of families and contributes to the community. A legacy of treating people fairly and working hard and never giving up. He paused, his voice growing thick with emotion. But more than all of that, we built a love story that will outlast us. Our grandchildren will tell their grandchildren about the cowboy who stopped drifting and the ranch owner who saved her father's legacy. They will tell them about the power of taking chances and choosing love and building a life together that mattered. Tears tracked down Keira's weathered cheeks. That is all I ever wanted. To matter, to make a difference, to not let my father's work be for nothing. You succeeded beyond your wildest dreams, Quinn assured her. And you did not do it alone. That is the beautiful part, Keira. We did it together, and together we created something that will endure long after we are gone. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The ranch bustled with activity even as evening approached. Thomas oversaw the final chores of the day. Anna worked with a young horse in the training ring. Jack reviewed accounts in the office, and Rose tended her ever-expanding gardens. Grandchildren ran and played, their laughter carrying on the summer breeze. Great-grandchildren toddled after them, the newest generation of Tanners growing up on land their great-grandparents had fought to save. It has been a good life, Keira said softly. The best life, Quinn agreed. And I would not change a single moment, even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones, because those are the moments that proved how strong we were together. As darkness fell, and the stars emerged one by one, they finally headed inside. Their movements were slower now, aided by canes and careful steps, but they still walked side by side, partners in every sense of the word. They prepared for bed with the comfortable routine of nearly 4 decades of marriage, each knowing the other's habits and preferences without needing to speak. Lying in bed with Keira's head on his shoulder and his arm around her waist, Quinn felt a profound sense of peace. This was everything he had ever wanted, though he had not known it during all those years of drifting from place to place. This was his purpose, his meaning, his true home. Quinn. Keira's voice was quiet in the darkness. Yes, love, thank you for choosing to stay. Thank you for loving me enough to give up your freedom. Quinn turned his head to press a kiss to her forehead. I did not give up my freedom, Keira, I found it. True freedom is not the absence of ties. It is choosing the right ties and honoring them. It is building a life that brings joy and purpose. It is loving someone so completely that being with them is the only place you want to be. He tightened his embrace. You are my freedom. You always have been. And you are mine, Keira whispered. My drifter who found his way home. Your drifter who found his true home, Quinn corrected one last time, and they fell asleep in each other's arms. 2 souls who had found their perfect match against all odds and built a life that would inspire generations to come. Their story became part of local legend, told and retold in the bars and churches and general stores of Spokane. The cowboy who gave up wandering for love, the ranch owner who refused to surrender her father's dream, and the empire they built together through determination and unwavering devotion to each other. It was a story about second chances and taking risks, about the power of love to transform lives, and the importance of knowing when you had found where you belonged. Quinn and Keira lived to see the ranch continue to thrive under their children's management, to welcome more great-grandchildren into the world, to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by the massive family they had created. They lived long enough to know with absolute certainty that their legacy was secure, that the work they had started would continue long after they were gone. When Quinn passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, Keira held his hand and whispered words of love and gratitude for a life well lived together. She grieved deeply, but not without hope, knowing they had given each other everything and left nothing unsaid. She lived another 5 years, staying active on the ranch and involved with her family until the very end. On the day Keira Tanner was laid to rest beside her beloved husband in the family plot overlooking the ranch they had built together, the entire community of Spokane turned out to pay their respects. 4 children, 23 grandchildren, and 41 great-grandchildren mourned the loss of the woman who had been the heart of the family. But they also celebrated a life extraordinarily well lived, a love story for the ages, and a legacy that would endure for generations. Thomas Tanner, now in his 60s and leading the ranch with the same dedication his parents had shown, stood at his mother's graveside and thought about the story she had told him countless times. The story of a young woman who almost lost everything, a drifting cowboy who stopped to help, and the love that saved them both. She used to say cowboys were drifters, Thomas told the assembled mourners, but my father proved her wrong. He showed her and all of us that cowboys are only drifters until they find their true home. And he found his with her, on this land with this family. They built something remarkable together, not just a successful ranch but a legacy of love and hard work, and never giving up on each other or their dreams. As the sun set over the ranch that evening, casting golden light across fields and pastures that had known 3 generations of Tanners, the family gathered on the porch where Quinn and Keira had spent so many evenings together. They shared stories and memories, laughed and cried, and promised to honor the legacy they had been given. The ranch would continue. The family would grow. New generations would be born and raised on this land, learning the values Quinn and Keira had embodied. And somewhere in the evening breeze that rustled through the trees and whispered across the grass, 2 souls who had loved each other completely for over 50 years were finally together again, home at last in every sense of the word. The story of Quinn and Keira Tanner became family legend, passed down from generation to generation. It was told to children as a bedtime story, to teenagers struggling with questions about love and commitment, to newlyweds starting their own journeys together. It became a reminder that the best things in life are worth fighting for, that love can overcome any obstacle, and that sometimes the greatest adventure is not in wandering but in finding where you truly belong and having the courage to stay. And through it all, the message remained clear. Cowboys might have a reputation as drifters, men who never settle down or commit to anything permanent, but that reputation tells only half the story. Because when a cowboy finds his true home, finds the person and the place where he belongs completely, the drifting stops. The wandering ends, and what begins is something far more meaningful than any solitary journey could ever be. Quinn Tanner found his true home with Keira Madsen on a struggling ranch outside Spokane, Washington in the spring of 1882. He stopped drifting and started building. He stopped running and started growing roots. He gave up the loneliness of constant movement for the profound satisfaction of belonging somewhere and to someone. And in doing so, he discovered that real freedom, real joy, real purpose comes not from avoiding commitment, but from choosing it with your whole heart. That was the legacy Quinn and Keira left behind. Not just a prosperous ranch or a large family, but a story about the transformative power of love and the courage to choose connection over isolation, commitment over freedom, staying over drifting. It was a story that would inspire their descendants for generations to come. A reminder that the greatest treasure is not what you accumulate through wandering, but what you build when you finally stop and plant yourself somewhere worth staying. And so the story ends where all the best stories end, with love triumphant, family thriving, and two souls who found each other against all odds and built a life together that mattered. Quinn, the drifter, became Quinn, the devoted husband and father. Keira, the struggling ranch owner, became Keira, the matriarch of a family empire. Together, they proved that cowboys are only drifters until they find their true home, and that home is always where your heart leads you. The Tanner Ranch stands to this day, still operated by descendants of Quinn and Keira, still upholding the values they established over a century ago. And on quiet evenings when the sun sets over the Washington hills in shades of gold and crimson, some say you can still feel their presence on that old porch. Two souls forever intertwined, forever home.